So we have a very special episode today. It is double the Sarah, double the fun. So,
Yay!
yay. Please welcome to the podcast, book cover designer and branding expert, Sarah Kill. Yay.
Yay!
Thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So, tell us a bit more about you and your business. How long have you been a graphic designer and what kind of led you to designing book covers?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I started kind of like graphic design about 8 years ago. I haven't studied or anything like that. Like I didn't go to school for it. I just kind of fell into my lap. But I was designing graphic tees
Hmm.
for just like, because I had a baby, and so I wanted to be able to stay home, and so I was kind of just trying to figure out ways to, you know, um, keep creative and also just kind of bring in a little bit of money, on the side too, and just kind of contribute. But anyway, yeah. So I started out with a graphic tees shop for baby clothes and mommy clothes, and then I did that for about 3 years. And I wanted to keep doing something with graphics. I really liked just kind of like the freelance part of it, just being able to stay home and like kind of just doing my own thing. And so I got into social media managing for a little bit, and then it just got kind of it kind of got mundane, and it was really hard just to manage other people's social medias. And so I was kind of looking for something different. And then about almost 3 years ago, I was like reading a lot of romance books. I was already an avid reader, but I don't know, that one particular summer I was just reading a ton, and I started like stalking, well, not stalking, but I started following all of my favorite authors that I had just like found, and they were like a lot of indie authors. And I didn't really know the difference between indie authors and traditional publishing at the time. I just thought, oh, they're just really great writers, and so I just follow them. And so I started doing that, and then I kind of noticed as I was following them that they were doing these things called cover reveals
Hmm.
of like their next books. And so I was like, I don't even know what that is. So, like, and then I just kept seeing it everywhere. And so I was like, this is really interesting. And so I kind of went down this like deep, dark rabbit hole of and they would and in the cover reveals that they would write down, if it's not traditional publishing, obviously, but if they were indie publishers, they would write down their cover designers. And
Hmm.
I was like, is that a real thing? Like, and I don't know why. I mean, of course, someone has to be designing their covers too. Like, that is obviously a job, but it just seemed like such a, like, I don't know, far away kind of a, I don't know, some job that it kind of just falls into your lap, or like
Hmm.
it's not something you kind of go looking for, I don't know. Yeah. So I just kind of started doing that, and I started following and stalking. I also stalking them. I just kept following all of these other indie like cover designers. And so from that point, I was like, I really want to try this because I'm an avid reader already. I love romance books, and I love doing that kind of stuff. So, but the thing is, I didn't know how to make a book cover. Like, I just knew, like, a little bit of here and
Uh-huh.
there, and how to put fonts together, but I didn't know how to make like an overall book cover. So yeah, so that's like about 3 years ago. And then I actually found Regina Wamba. She is a cover designer and a photographer. She does exclusive photos, and she is also the owner of the Image Apothecary. So if you
Hmm.
do any of the book flat lays, like a lot of them are hers. But she had a course that only taught like how to do book covers, and so she went over like almost every genre, and like just how to make a book cover, and like the specs that you need, and she went over branding and everything like that. So I learned a lot. Everything that I know, I learned from her, and so that's kind of just how I got started. So
And how interesting. I love that you said you were like kind of self-taught and then it
yes.
kind of fell into your lap because I know
Mhm,
a lot of the authors I talk to, especially a lot of like you
mhm,
said indie romance authors or and especially with the rise of self-publishing, a
mhm.
lot of people are like going out and learning these skills
Yes.
now to kind
Mhm.
of like put them into practice or at
Yeah.
least what to look for, kind of
Mhm.
educating themselves into kind of what they need to be doing or we're looking for in a cover. And
Yes.
I think there's a huge rise, and that's why we love a self-taught lady around here. So
Yes. I am self-taught, so
That's amazing. So that's
thank you.
incredible. Yeah. Because since you kind of are more familiar now with covers and you've been doing it for a little
Yeah.
while,
Mhm,
uh, there is a huge debate in the
mhm.
romance community. I know that we kind of chit chatted about it in DMs a little bit about the illustrated versus like the stock photo.
Yes.
So, what, like from a graphic designer perspective or a designs perspective, do you have any opinions about that?
Um, I I guess I do, because I do get asked a lot to do illustrated covers. I'm personally not an illustrated, like I don't draw from scratch or anything like that.
Okay.
So I have to use vectors that are kind of they are stock images technically, but I have to manipulate and do all that stuff. But and I wish I could draw. I wish I could draw, but I
Hmm.
can't. Maybe to the like stick figures, but that's about it. But yeah, for illustrated covers, I feel like they're really cute. And I feel like they have been used a lot for rom-coms, and I think they're
Yes.
safer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a lighter feel. I just get kind of confused because I think illustrated covers before they used to be rom-coms, but they were like sweet romance. So not like steamy, but like very clean and wholesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I recently, maybe not recently, but maybe within the last year or so, have kind of seen like a shift of a lot of the steamier romance writers going into that. So doing more illustrated covers. And so now I can't really tell the difference unless they write out, hey, this is a steamy book, or this is a clean romance, or something like that. But I think illustrator covers, they are really cute and they work really well if you do rom com or something lighter, I would say. Um, in terms of stock images, I mean, those are always going to be around and they do really well,
Mm-hmm.
especially like if you have the male covers, like the male solo covers, they do really, really well on their own.
Well, and I'm
So,
glad you mentioned the illustrated because I've noticed that shift too. And I was glad it's
mhm.
not just me
Yeah.
that I've noticed that a lot of the illustrated covers, I will post this picture probably on my Twitter or my Instagram because I just took a picture of the Amazon on my recommended. They were all illustrated, but they were like varying degrees. I know that some of them
Uh-huh.
were rom coms, but I know some of them were real steamy. And so,
Okay.
but they were all
Yeah.
using illustrated covers.
Yeah.
And I've heard two different like kind of interesting pros and cons to it. Like the pros are, it's a little more accessible to people
Mhm.
like that may be intimidated, right, by a shirtless stock photo, a
Yeah.
shirtless guy on the front.
Yeah. Yeah. For
Or
sure.
and but at the same time, you're right, because they were, I think, so uh, utilized so much for rom-coms, at least in the beginning, to kind of
Uh-huh.
associate with that sweet romance. Some people
Yeah.
have picked up recent ones that are a little more steamy, and I've heard some people complain in Goodreads or things. Oh, I thought this was totally, you know, a different type of book according
Mhm.
to the cover. Because let's be
Right.
honest, we all judge a book by its cover,
Yes,
right?
for sure.
So, but the stock, as far as like, do you get a lot of requests for the illustrated now, like more so than you've seen in the past, or not so much?
Um, I would say not as much.
Okay.
A lot of the covers that I do are tend to be like very specific like subgenres,
Oh.
like cowboys or something darker or a billionaire or something like that, and so I don't get a lot of illustrated covers. I do get, I mean, it's not that I don't get it at all, but I would say I don't get a lot of it's not as much as the stock photos.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
Okay. And yeah, and I still, and of course I love stock photo, like, and custom. I know custom
Hmm.
is a very big, like, everyone wants a different type of book as far as like making the
Yeah.
covers, and
Yeah.
they're beautiful. So that's good to know you do the custom, kind of like more the
Hmm.
custom kind of oriented stuff. And so both the shirtless stock photos and the illustrated covers gained traction over time.
Yeah.
And now the trends have become staples in romance, right? Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
whether we like it or not, it's kind of become now kind of a more foundational part of romance.
Yes.
Are you seeing like any new trends in romance, or even in the romance subgenres? Like you mentioned, the billionaires, the cowboys. Like, anything specific or even color schemes? Because I did know when I
Yeah.
mentioned about the illustrated the other day, when I took a picture of it, I did notice too, they all had a very similar color scheme. So I was having a hard time telling them apart.
Yes. That's going to be common in book covers only because
Mm.
like it's kind of hard because you want like the similarity of it because you want to be able to market it like everybody else. Like it's kind of like a marketing tool.
Ah.
So you do want like that similarity so they know, oh yeah, that's a rom-com, or oh yeah, that's a mafia or something like that. So they do have like very similar looks. But then
Mm.
you also want to try to be different with it. So it kind of is a little tricky. But especially for illustrated, what was really in was the faceless, like the minimalist drawings. Yeah,
Yes.
so like they don't have any faces, and that's still very popular. I would say like some of them that are like more drawn in are starting to come out that way. I think you can find like a really good illustrator that can do that for you. That works really, really well. Um, but yeah, I mean, so a lot of people were just you just kind of stick to the same, because everyone was doing minimalist faces, then you just kind of follow along the line and maybe just change up, your font, or you change up some of the colors, or you change up, the background or something like that to make it
Mm.
a little bit more unique to you, but it would just still be the same faceless, illustration.
And that's a good point. So you can market it very similarly, like next to
Yeah.
other, like you said, other subgenre or very similar
Uh-huh.
books of that
Yes.
type.
Yeah. So
Ah,
it can't be too out there or too unique. It has to still kind of be in the same, yeah.
well, yeah, and I know I mentioned I've talked about a previous in another with another marketer that kind of you kind of still got to follow, right? You got to still follow the pack, right? To kind
Yes.
of see what they're doing because obviously what
Hmm.
they're doing is working to a certain
Hmm.
extent.
Exactly.
Have you seen any then new trends as far as like I said, color schemes or even like this like we mentioned kind of back in the day when like the 80s romances, I know they had all the sighing heroines and like those long
Yeah. Okay, so what I have noticed is some of the colors have changed. It's a lot of black
oh,
and white, um, a lot of
mm,
like gray stock images, like stock models, and then you put like a hint of color. A lot of gritty covers, which will be like having a certain texture over it, to make it kind of like a grungy look. It's like really in.
hey,
I've
that's
also
good.
noticed, I don't know if maybe it's just what I design or what is my mood when I'm creating covers, but I do a lot of dark romances, and so I don't even read that. I don't even read a lot of dark romances, but I don't know. I just love the cover. I think I just love the look of it, and I just love the darker colors, and I don't know. So I feel like I've been doing a lot of those. Yeah. So there's just been a lot of like a lot of darker covers that I've been doing. I've also been doing a lot of mountain men covers. So that's like a
Very
big trope
interesting.
that has been selling very well. I think every time I make a pre-made of a mountain man, it immediately sells. So that's a huge trend right now. The mountain men subgenre, and then a lot of like the speak covers have been coming out. That's kind of a new trend. So
Oh,
it's like an alternative cover. So if you don't want to have, a sexy male model on there, they'll have like another cover, like a secondary cover, where it's just like an object cover, like florals or steaks or something objective, basically. They'll put that out. I haven't really figured out how they have two of the same titles on there yet, but I know it's done. So
huh,
I don't know if they just do
interesting.
it as like a second edition or something like that that they can list it as, but yeah, there's the straight covers have been coming out a lot more. Um, so
Well, that's very interesting. I didn't know that some authors were doing that. But I
yeah,
mean, but that makes sense, right? Like kind of like I mentioned before, maybe it was like more accessible,
yeah.
or maybe somebody just really liked two covers for their
I
book.
think yeah, definitely. I think it's because AM like the AMS ads and then especially Facebook, like the two main sources for promoting your book. It's just like couples are less seen only
Mhm.
because like if he's just like touching her arm and it's too it's too seductive, it's too sexy, and so then it'll get flagged, or like
Oh.
And so just like a lot of stuff has been happening, so like they haven't been able to do AMS ads, or sometimes Facebook will flag and just say it's inappropriate, or you're selling, something you're not supposed to be selling. And so there's just a lot of problems that have been like with the ads because of the covers. And so even sometimes shirtless males will sometimes flag the ads.
Hmm.
So yeah, it just kind of depends on the robot that day, the bot that day that's going around and shutting people down. But yeah, so that I could see why those discrete covers are starting to come out. It's because stock images are kind of giving problems to authors in terms of marketing their books. Um, so,
How interesting. And I didn't know that. I had heard the same thing as far as like some people getting a little bit in trouble, like as far as like, and I know with this rise of like self-pub authors, especially
uh,
now that that's become such a big business, and
mhm.
especially in the romance category, that there's so many out there and they might be looking at those because a lot of those, like you said, had like similar images, like maybe
Yes,
have like similar the shirtless men or anything like that. And they're just like, ooh, that's a
yeah,
little too spicy for
yeah.
Amazon of all places, but
Uh-huh.
okay.
Right. No, it really is. It's kind of ridiculous, like what they allow and what they don't allow, or you might get kicked into like erotica, even if your book's not erotic. And so there's just, I think everyone's just trying to play it safe as much as we hate it at being censored
Mm,
that way.
mm,
Um, it's unfortunate because I think women on covers honestly are beautiful. I love the look of women on big covers, but they just don't sell as well, and then they also get flagged more. So if you have a couple on there, the women always get flagged more so than the men. So it's kind of unfortunate, but and I think
aw.
couples do. I mean, in general, I mean, when I do a cover and I have a couple on there, I love how it looks. I think it's beautiful and it shows the relationship on a cover, and yet we can't use it very, because we'll get flagged for it. So
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I did not know that. Yeah. And so that's very interesting to know. But I guess that's why I don't see many of the, because I was even thinking that the other day. I was like, why don't they have more of the like the old 80s covers, with like the guys holding the ladies and the ladies, but
Uh,
they're in corsets or they got their thighs out and
yeah,
everything.
but they're still dressed.
They're
They're
still
still
dressed.
dressed.
They
That's
still
the
have
front.
a
Yeah,
dress. Yeah, they still have a dress on, but
yeah,
like you could just, they show a little bit of leg or something and they're just like, oh,
yeah.
so,
Uh-huh.
falling over themselves.
No,
But I guess you
that's
can't do that
we're
anymore.
we're past that.
Bummer. Bummer.
Hmm.
But no, but I do love the covers and I do especially love I was going through some of your work and it was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So is there anything specific then an author should consider then when choosing a cover? Since like you said, some things tend to get flagged or at least a little
Um,
spicy.
yes, I think male solo covers are always safe. And I have been seeing even for the steamier covers, you can always do obviously shirtless and get away with it. But I have been seeing a lot of even steamier authors putting clothes on them now. So I don't know if that's just to be discreet for readers or discreet for AMS just in case. But I've been
Mm,
seeing a little bit of a shift there with them dressed more. Most of the authors that I work with always want them shirtless. So I get to deal with that, but in a good way. So yeah, I would say male covers always do the best. If you haven't heard of Kalytics, I'm totally just throwing out their name there, but they do a really good job of showing what's on trend, and they'll have like all of
mm.
these graphs and percentages and all this other stuff. But they'll always tell you like which ones are ranking, like even from like males with shirts on, males without shirts on, or couples or illustrated or whatever for that genre. And so I think that's a great way to kind of um, someone's doing their homework for you, so you can always look those up through
That's
Kalytics.
amazing. And do they look
Yeah,
at subgenres as well? I mean,
uh-huh,
I
yeah,
assume.
yeah.
Huh.
So they'll just kind of give you like a big genre. So to be like the last one I downloaded, I mean, you do have to pay for it, and but if you're just kind of curious, like if you're about to release a book, within the next couple of months, maybe you want to take a look at what they came up with, the reports, what's doing really well, and so that you can kind of maybe your cover that way, or market it that way, I should say. But yeah, they'll show you. So I downloaded their, I think it was their Sweet Romance. I did download one, their
Oh.
Sweet Romance report, and it did show me like, hey, like this percentage is really high for males with their shirts on, or here's the illustrated, and so they'll just kind of show you the, you know yeah, so it's pretty nice.
That's awesome because then we can
Yeah.
also, yeah, like you said, you can kind of like dig in to see, because you do want to kind of follow what everyone else uh
Yeah.
kind of
The trends.
does,
Yeah.
but different, right? The same
Yes.
but different.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Just so you kind of know, yeah, just so people know exactly what you're selling. As we talked about the illustrated thing, if you sell an illustrated, someone might assume rom-com. I mean, that's what I would have assumed like two,
Yeah.
3 years ago, but now I know
Right.
better.
Yeah.
So that's really great to know. Do you ever, and this might be completely off the wall, that might be a totally like more custom related to
Mhm.
custom things, but do you ever like find like using specific imagery to align with a book, or does that usually come from the author? Or do you just kind of go off a title or
Um,
description? I've always wondered that.
yeah, I guess it kind of depends. I'll have authors like if they come to me about a specific like an object cover, then sometimes they'll usually tell me what they want. You know, and then sometimes they won't say anything, and I just have to kind of guess. But no, I would say if you're coming to me for with an object cover, I always
Mhm.
say like you don't need to put in a ton of details from your book. Like it just kind of has to be like a vague image, that would work. So for example, I love this example because it's like the one that always sticks in my head for objective covers. Sky Warren does really good objective covers. The one that she just recently came out, it's gorgeous cover, and it just has like a key, like just a single key, and then like some kind of a ribbon hanging from it. And the ribbon throughout the book is like just different colors. But she has like a couch cushion behind each cover, and then the key, and then like this ribbon, but they're not tied the same. They're all kind of hanging differently throughout each book, but it's so cohesive because it's like the same key, like the same ribbon imagery, and then like a cushion behind it. So the texture is like the same. So like, and then, like the title and everything is all titles are also important. If you could get them kind of to match, that's amazing too. It just kind of balances out the cover really well if you can get them to all like, look pretty and do that.
Well,
So
and yeah, and I love that because that's such a visual thing. Like I'm
mhm.
very
Yeah.
visually like oriented as far as like when I look at something, and I could probably, like you said, just look at that and know immediately all those books go together. If they're,
Yes.
even though they're very, they are different, but they're
Yeah.
very similar in that
Yes.
regard.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that makes me think that's a very interesting question to me. So what does the process usually look like as far as like building a book cover? Like how do you like approach that?
Okay, so I usually need to know what their genre is, and then if they can
Mm,
give me kind of like a synopsis of what they're, so I don't usually need a synopsis, but sometimes like if I need to be inspired, then it might help.
mhm,
Just like some of their choice words that they use. I also need to know if it's, like a dark romance or, a light romance. Or anything like that. And then some usually they'll tell me like what they want, like oh, I want a couple or I want to be a couple, and so I'll kind of go off of that, whatever I feel.
mm,
Um I have some authors that like give me a list of things like he's got, you know, brown hair and it's like X long, and he's got like blue eyes and he's like this kind of musky, and then I'm like, oh, I'm like,
uh,
how am I gonna find a stock photo for that? I kind of have to guess, at that point, but or find something similar. But if they're really specific, then I'm able to find something like that, unless it's completely out of the ballpark. Like he's got like X million amount of tattoos and she's got red hair. So um, you know, but yeah, usually they'll kind of tell me, and I'll kind of come up with that. And the process is just, it really just depends. Like for dark romances, I like to put a lot of grit in it, so I'll put a lot of like texture, like over like a lot of overlays of texture and like dark backgrounds in there, and usually have like, if it's like a mafia, then I'll put them in red, or
mm,
uh, a lot of the dark romances are usually red, gold, or sometimes even silver. And so I'll use like any three of those depending on what the subgenre is.
gotcha.
So, mhm.
Ah, well, see, and I know it's such a collaborative process, right?
Yes.
It's between like going between the author and the book cover designer as far as
Yeah.
like getting
Uh-huh.
just the right book because it is. It's like it's kind of like your baby. You
I
want it to
know it
look
is.
right.
Yes. I'm just going to be very honest about that. I understand that it's your baby. You've been working on it for like a million years and you just got it right. Now you need to cover. I would say the number one, if I can admit this, the number one mistake
Go
that
for
I
it.
kind of see in especially first time authors is that they want to put in like a specific scene in their book, or they want
Mm,
to, like, oh, this represents this. And so I want to put that on the cover or something like that. Or it's just like a very detailed scene that they want for some reason in that cover. And I understand that it's important to you, but I just want to say that if you are trying to sell your book and try to market it, that none of that's going to matter, because in marketing, you literally only have a couple of seconds to grab someone's attention. So if it is too busy, or it's not like it has that one weird scene in it, but nobody understands what it means because they haven't read the book, then they're most likely going to pass it because they didn't know where to focus. Like it's got like, a gunpowder here, and then it's got like some, crystal here. And it's just, there's just so much going on in the cover. They don't know where to focus. So their attention is just going to keep going and scroll through. So my advice always to first time authors is to do not to get so not to get so tied to the cover like that, because if you really want to market it, your main goal is to get your book out there so that people read and read your amazing story.
yes.
And so like the cover really has to do its job, and so that's where your designer comes in. You just got to let them do it. And I mean, even if it's just a male, a really good looking male on that cover, like most people will stop to to look at that cover and then read your blurb, and then you'll catch them. So um it takes 2 seconds for them to keep scrolling, so you don't
And
want to confuse
yeah,
them.
what an awesome point too, because yeah, there's so much we don't know, especially as first time, like I said, so the rise of self-publishing, a lot of first time authors out there, and they don't really know what they
Yeah.
want, right? Or they
Uh-huh.
don't know what's
Right.
probably the best for marketing. And I
Yes.
know one of my girlfriends, she definitely has she's a self-published author and she's done
Hmm.
several books, but one thing I thought was really funny is that she had a book cover done twice because one, the male model she picked, he had cut his hair right before the shoot. Like she had a custom cover and everything, but she was so hung up on his hair being long. And
Uh-huh.
I was like, I think psychology just, I think readers would just fill that in. I don't think they'd be caught up that much about it, right?
Yeah, no, they don't. I mean, you might have like the exception where someone's like, I don't think you look like that, or whatever, but most of the time your readers are not going to care if you cut his hair in this scene. Or because I have a lot of authors that tell me that, like if I show them a cover, they're like, well, her hair's not the right length, and I'm like, well, like everything else is fine, but the hair length is not correct, or like it's too short or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll even have authors tell me, like, if they haven't finished this manuscript, they just say, oh, I'll just fill it in when she cuts her hair in the book. But I'm like it doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't
Right.
matter. Like you don't have to add that
Right.
in at all. Like it's just, so I mean, yeah. So some people take it to the extreme, and I think it is very, very psychological, yes, because they just
Yeah.
want to get it right. And I understand that too. I totally understand that. So
I completely agree with you because right, it's about getting the book out there to the readers,
yeah,
getting it in the hands of the readers, and it's so easy, I think, especially as first-time authors, to get caught up in all the details and be a little
yes,
like overwhelmed by it.
yes.
So,
Hmm.
are there any other mistakes you kind of or things you would suggest, right, to authors as far as like here's what you want to avoid in a cover or just might think otherwise about?
Besides that one where they want all the things,
I know, right?
I I would just say, just do your research, do your market research, like check the bestsellers list in your
Mm,
genre that you're writing, and check out your comps, like your comp authors, like the ones that you are very similar with, or like the audience or the readers that you are wanting to grab. Check them out, see what they're doing. I mean, they've obviously have enough readership and they're doing something right with their books. Most of them are usually doing what they're supposed to be doing. There are some one-offs that can just do whatever and pull out whatever cover they want to, and it'll still work because they have that readership. But I feel like most of them do follow like some kind of marketing strategy. Like they get like their genre right, the cover's right. And they're just the exception. Some that don't, but that's okay. That's what they can do whatever they want. but yeah, so I would just say that just do your research, and then also just trust your designer. Like they know what they're doing. Like this is what we do for a living. And so we are always, I mean, I'm always checking Amazon bestsellers, and I'm always, even if I have a custom cover and I'm not quite sure like what they're really wanting, then I'll go and like look for inspiration, like using their bestsellers, like looking up, different things. I just got asked to do a historical time travel book, and I've never done time travel, and I've never done historical, so I had to like look that up. So I mean, and I had to do my research for that, because I mean, like I can't just give them something that's not going to sell or be marketable. So yeah, so I would just definitely do your homework. Um, Male models are always really popular, so you can't go wrong with that. And I don't know what else. I guess get your colors right, like your color schemes are important. Uh,
Well,
yeah.
and that's some great advice. And we all, and as romance readers, we know that there's always, usually if an author puts out a book, at least right now the trend is it usually goes in a series, right?
Yes.
So like
Uh-huh.
do you recommend, like how do you recommend, like we were talking about before, like you'd mentioned like the key. Like I love that idea. The key, like the
Mhm.
being similar but different across a series of a book. Are there other recommendations you would have for like branding across a series, or kind of making the
Yeah.
covers at least cohesive with each other?
Yes. I would. Okay. So what I normally do, I'll just take a small town romance. So small town romance, I'll do like either a couple or a male, and usually at the bottom I'll have some kind of a texture underneath him or her or the couple, and I will use that same texture throughout each book. And
Hmm.
then maybe I'll just like put the colors. So like it'll be like green in one, blue in the other, and purple in the next, and then pink and whatever. So and I'll consistently use that same field or whatever texture that I'm using at the time. And then all I'll do is like tweak the colors. So like that still is the same, even though the colors are different, but at least and then the placements are all the same too. So I really try to find when I do it, when I do my covers, I try to find like the poses, like very similar, where like, it's not too zoomed in or too zoomed out or whatever. It's like the right exact pose. And then I'll try to get them to match like across, so they're like at the same level. And then the title's at the same spot, and then the author name is at the same spot, and then like have the same texture right across, so that it looks, so then if you like put them together, you'll know like, hey, that's the whole series. So
No,
something like
that's
that.
awesome. Yeah, because I love it when I see a series and I can tell, like I said, very
Yeah.
visual,
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
they're all part of the same. They're
Uh-huh.
all somewhere in a series.
Right.
I actually talked about this too with my in a marketing talk I actually had with a book marketer, and
Uh-huh.
curious to get your opinion, or do you see it
Sure.
often? We had talked about putting numbers in a book, like
Hmm.
as far as like the series, like this is number one, and sometimes you pick up a series and you don't, you pick it up in like book three and you don't realize
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
until like you like midway through and they're referencing other things.
Yeah. You're like, wait.
Like, hold up. Do you ever see that, or is that anything? Do you see that currently, or have you seen that really ever, that people put like numbers in there? I'm just curious for the romance genre or
Yes.
any other genre, if you see it in one genre and not the other.
Here are my thoughts. This is what I've kind of been saying. I don't know if it's true or not, or it's just my
Okay.
observation. In the beginning, I used to get asked to put book numbers like in the series, and I would just do it. But
Mhm.
lately, I've been asked to take it off. So even if I accidentally put it on, they're like, "Can you take that off?" So what I'm assuming is
Oh.
happening is because for marketing, when you do a series, you want it to be a series but a standalone. So that way,
Mhm.
I think that works the best. I think for indie authors is that like you can read them whenever you want to. And so I think they're kind of doing that, so that if you do pick up number three, you can still read it alone. And then but I think maybe the number might bother you. Like if you knew that this is book three and you were starting at book three, So I think they just want you to be able to pick up wherever, because it's supposedly a standalone, that you can just read it all by itself and then figure out that it's a series and then go back or whatever, or read where you missed if you wanted to. So yeah, it
Right.
could be a marketing strategy. I think maybe that the numbers in, because it would mess me up if because I like reading in order, even if it's a standalone in order. I still like to have that background, and they do have references that I may miss, or, I mean, I'm sure that they would talk about it again, but
Hmm.
for me, I just like to read things in order. So if I found out that I picked up book three because it didn't have a number on it, then I would be really upset, because then I'd have to go back and be like, wait, I missed the whole thing. And, like, but I mean, but that's just me as a reader. I feel like I would love the numbers, but right now, like, nobody's putting numbers on their books.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I was curious about, because I know a lot of the romance does that. Romance in particular, right? Does
Mhm.
that. It's a standalone, but it's best enjoyed is
Yes.
part of this bit larger series,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that was something we had just kind of mulled over, because I was like, I don't see that anymore. So
No, yeah.
I was just wondering if you got, so good to know,
Yeah.
because,
No
and
numbers.
it is important, like you said, the shift of that over time has gone away, but,
Hmm.
and that might be too, that is true. I'm the same way. I like to read
Yeah.
in order. So if
I
I
am
picked
too.
up
I'm like,
book,
please put the numbers on there, please.
I know, because I'm just like, I pick
Uh,
it up and I'm just like halfway through and I'm just like, who are all these other people they
I
keep
know.
talking about?
Because I don't know. For me, I'm
That's
like,
just
if
me.
you're writing this as a series, like, that book one is like the start off. Like, I mean, you are starting these characters and you're
Yes.
introducing them, and I mean, I
Hmm.
just feel like you wouldn't get that in book three. Like, you wouldn't get like the whole picture. I feel like it would be just be missing something. I don't know. So I feel like book one is very essential to read that first. I don't
No, I'm with you completely. And so
know.
I was just curious for my knowledge, because I was just like,
Yeah.
I gotta know. I just gotta know. And you kind of, we touched on it very, very briefly, but we talked
Yeah.
about like doing other genres as well. So I
Uh-huh.
know there's a lot of authors, like I said, because all the self-publishing indie authors, a lot of them will cross genres. So
Mhm.
is there a good or consistent way, or anything you could suggest as far as like kind of maybe branding or any kind of cover thing? I know a lot of indie authors in particular will kind of use certain fonts sometimes to
Mhm.
brand
Yeah.
across genres. Are
Yeah.
you, do you suggest anything else, or do you see anything else usually typically?
I am trying to think of somebody that writes different genres. Okay, Kristen Proby. I know that
Hmm.
she has a little bit of paranormal. And then she also writes these contemporaries that are like set in Seattle. And I only know this because, like, as I'm scrolling, like, these things pop up. But I would say, um, like, if I didn't know her and I just saw her books without her name, I would say that I wouldn't be able to tell it was the same author, or
Mm,
based on just the covers. And
okay.
they're both beautifully done. But because one is contemporary and one is paranormal, I feel like you really wouldn't be able to mesh that very well. Like, because you want to be able to market it to people that like paranormal and people that like contemporary. So I feel like if you're doing that, I think, like, the one common thing that I can think of that you can do across the board is just having the same author name font, um,
Okay.
and stuff like that. But and then making sure that you're on point with your covers, I guess, depending on what you're writing at the moment. So, because I wouldn't want you to, if you're decide to write dark romance, but you normally write light romance, then that you're making an illustrated cover, for a darker romance, just
Hmm.
because you wanted to mesh. So I think in this case, for branding, it's safe to say that you can, make them look different because you're matching the genres. But I wouldn't say that there's like a specific way to, I don't know how you would brand those, except with the fonts maybe, or
Well,
I don't know,
that's,
just being on point. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's great to know, because I didn't think there would be a way
Yeah.
maybe to do that. And like you said, because the subgenres are different, each
Yeah.
branding of the and the marketing for
Yeah,
each
it's just so
subgenres.
specific. I feel like
Mhm.
it would be really hard to do that. And so that Kristen probably was kind of the best example, is that she has this Bayou Magic series that she does, and it's beautifully done. And she uses the same designer too, so it's not like different
Mm,
designers that are doing this. So I mean, so that it's good. And so she does these, and they're just like object covers. They're like in nature, and they're very glowy and really pretty. But then she has like the Seattle series, and it's like very contemporary, and still very pretty, but you would never look at them together and be like, oh yeah, that's that's the same type of book or whatever. So I feel like, yeah, but she does a great job differently. Like, she brands them very well, like, just for paranormal, just for like contemporary. I feel like she does a really good job.
and that's a great thing to point out too, because I know I know a lot of romance authors actually too will do that occasionally. They will, if they don't cross genre, sometimes they'll make a whole new pen name
Mhm.
just to create their one author profile in one genre and then one in a totally
Yeah,
different one.
yeah.
It's
I feel
like
like if you're
they
just starting out, it's harder to
mm,
cross genres like that, only because you don't have that readership and you don't want to like upset anybody that may not want to read it or whatever. But I feel like if you've already established readership, like you can do whatever you want. I feel like you have some some power there.
fair point. Fair point.
Yeah,
Yes, if you have a big
yeah,
readership,
yeah.
you can break those rules however you
You
want.
can break a lot of rules, lots and lots of rules.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And speaking of marketing, because we kind of like I said, touched on that very briefly.
Yeah.
I've heard other marketing people say that authors should recover their books every year.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
But that can, get a little pricey pretty quickly. Should
Right.
authors consider recovering their backlist? If so,
Um,
how often?
right. I have heard that too. As a frugal person, I feel like that's as a frugal person, and if I was a writer, I feel like that would be very expensive. um, but I also feel like I feel like if your series is working, like that one particular series is working, I don't think you need to, and it's still on trend. I feel like you could keep it, because I know a lot of authors still keep some of their, older covers, and they haven't rebranded it. But there's other covers, the trend changes all the time. Even within the last 3 years that I've been doing this, the trends always change, and so
Mm,
like, what might have worked 3 years ago is not going to work now. So, um, I would say if you're kind of seeing a little lack of readership on maybe your series, then I would definitely, the first two things that you want to look at is your blurb and your cover to see what
okay.
what could work. And so usually that kind of picks things up. Especially, I think blurb is cheaper, so maybe you want to look at your blurb first, and tweak that. And then if that's not it and you're still not getting enough clicks, then I would say maybe the cover is something you need to look at. So,
I
yeah.
also see a couple of people, and just to hear your opinion as well. Like a lot of times, if they get their rights back from, like, say, an indie publisher
Mhm.
who one reason or another it just didn't work out, they will often recover those books. So
Yeah.
do you see that happening too? Just to kind of differentiate between when it was with that indie
Yes.
publisher versus
Almost
them. Let's go ahead.
almost always I see a change in, like,
Mhm.
the ones that I've at least gotten. They're like, I'm getting the rights back to this and I really want to change the cover, because they don't have a say in it. And unfortunately, I have seen a lot of indie publishers, their design stuff is not up to par, not up to market, which is kind of
Hmm. That's
funny
sad.
because, yeah, it is a little sad because you're a publisher, but I I,
Huh.
I just expect more from them. But their covers are not as good, I feel like. They're not up to par, that's for sure. And so I feel like that's why a lot of them come back and want to change it to make it more marketable, or so.
Okay. Yeah, because I've heard that too. And I've seen a lot of romance authors do that. If they do get those rights
Yeah.
back, a lot of times they
Hmm.
will. But that's a good point too. Sometimes they don't even ask them if they do when they do the covers. Like
Yeah.
what they get the author's input.
Uh-huh.
And I guess that's why I like the self-publishing route just a
Yes,
little bit
because you do have a
better.
say in it.
Yeah.
You get to have your own little, um, whatever you want to put in it. Yeah, you have a say.
Yeah,
So,
because yeah, you can do whatever you want because it is like we were saying, it is your book. You
yeah.
can do whatever you want with it, even, if it is crazy off trend, but just,
Hmm.
just beware whatever happens with
Yeah,
it.
there are consequences,
Yes,
but
there
you can do
are.
whatever you want.
Yeah, but go ahead and do
But at
whatever
the
you
end
want.
of, at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly. Exactly. How long does it usually take for covers to be made? I was just curious.
Oh, if to be made,
Yeah.
um, if if I'm having a good day or I'm like super inspired, I can probably knock it out like within an hour or so.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but then there are some that don't speak to me, and that takes usually a day and a half.
Uh,
So yeah, so I'm pretty quick, because I have like a formula of like I kind of understand like what I need, and the colors are easy to tweak sometimes, and if it's not too much. But I would say like especially the contemporary romance, not that it's just easy. It's I mean it's easier, I guess, because but I am also doing a lot of coloring and all that other stuff, and so I mean it doesn't really take that long. But if I have to like cut out a bunch of things or change a hair color or clothes, and sometimes I get asked to do that, those take obviously a little bit more time.
But I guess that's the good thing too, since you've as you mentioned, you've been doing it for a little bit. So you kind of
Yeah.
know kind of the ins and outs of what you got to do. So
Yes,
you know how to
yes. If
approach
it's
it.
like just a very typical contemporary romance, I can knock it up pretty quick. If it's a little bit more challenging, like the historical romance one that I did,
Mm,
that took about a few days because I have
fair.
to do the research, and yeah. So, and it's different because the historical is beautiful covers, and they have like this finish to it, and so like you just kind of want to get it all right at the when you can.
Well, I appreciate you putting the detail though in there because I know a lot of times there's like a whole Instagram hashtag of like a step back Saturday where people will show off some of their older like historical romances in
Yeah,
particular because their covers are so pretty. Like
yeah.
we've said. So I appreciate you kind of getting that just right. So
Yes, I did have to look that up. I was like, how did they get that finish? I did have to look it up because I've never used it before, but I'm glad that I know now how to do it. So
well, hey, there you go.
yes,
So one last question for you.
sure.
Where can people find you and how can they connect?
Oh, okay, good question. I have I did make a TikTok, and I'm not very good at posting on there yet. I mostly do videos. I do have one where I'm like actually see my face and then you see my baby's the back of her head because I was like, well, I gotta get this video out somehow. And I was holding her. So I mean we worked it out. But I do have TikTok. If you want to see some of the videos, like I haven't done like a fast version of it yet, but I've done some clips. And so there's that. And then I am mostly on Facebook, not the page, but the group. I have a Facebook group. I show most of my preemies in there first, and it's more active. And I do all of my announcements there. I don't even do a newsletter because I'm terrible at it. So I do all of my announcements there because I assume that everyone's in there that I need to talk to. And so yeah, we have a lot of fun in there. The ladies are so awesome and wonderful and very encouraging. I also do Instagram, and that's more just you can't really interact like you do in Facebook, but I usually just post like pre-mates or some cover review or something like that, and so you can always follow that too. Yeah.
And your handle's at Sarah Kill Creative Studio. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
I think that's my Facebook too. Let me see. Yeah, it's Serica Creative Studio. That is the Facebook group too.
Perfect. Thanks so much to Sarah for being part of the podcast. There's no book recommendations for today's episode, but I do highly recommend you check out either Sarah's Instagram or her Facebook page, where you can see the most gorgeous covers that she designs. I hope you stay safe, healthy, and keep writing. Bye!